Hello!
Hello!
Welcome to the first ever episode of the Bechdel Theatre podcast.
Hi, I'm Beth.
I'm Pippa, and
We're your hosts.
So let's kick off by talking about what is the Bechdel Test and what is Bechdel Theatre.
The Bechdel Test was conceived by a woman called Alison Bechdel in 1985. She wrote a comic strip where she had women talking about film, and they were talking about, does this film have two women in it? Do they talk to each other at any point? And do they talk to each other about something that's not a man? It was highlighting the lack of female roles and the fact that women are usually in a supportive role beside a male protagonist. We're using it to talk about theatre, and we're also using it to highlight positive examples of where women are passing the Bechdel test, where women are represented, and where a show has something interesting to say about gender, or it's representing gender in a way that bucks the trend.
So, what's coming up in this first episode? Well, we're going to be discussing Emma Rice's departure from the Globe. We have an interview with Jade and Anouka, which Beth very kindly conducted, who is in the Shakespeare Trilogy at the Donmar.
The Donmar Trilogy at King's Cross has been a brilliant season representing women and pretty groundbreaking. It was amazing to talk to Jade. We also have #BringAFeministFriend, in which Pippa took part in a challenge to take people who wouldn't normally go to the theatre to see a show.
And you might be in for a chance to win a prize, but stick around and find out more about that later.
We'll also give you lots of shows to book for in the future, so stick around to the end and you can find out which shows to see that might pass the Bechdel test.
Amazing. So let's start the show. So the first thing we want to talk about is Panto, because it is the season. Oh no, she didn't.
Oh yes, she did.
But we did. So pantomime. What do we think about pantomime in terms of Bechdel test, in terms of gender, in terms of like morality tale? What do you think?
I mean, I have a really soft spot for Panto because I grew up watching it pretty much every Christmas and I loved it. I loved the sparkle, I loved the jokes, I loved the dames, I loved the principal boy. I loved the way they were all cross-gender, gender bending without it being an issue or controversial.
Yeah.
I loved the camp, but maybe that was something about growing up in Brighton. It seemed like camp was a very natural tone for me to warm to.
Yeah.
And being a theatre person.
Yeah, I feel like Panto often gets a bit of bad rep, but it does a lot in terms of going to see Panto as a tradition as a kid and seeing gender swapping kind of in theatre maybe for the first time. Yeah,
seeing it be normal for a woman to play a male character and a man to play a female character in a way that you don't necessarily get in films. So like they're often telling the same stories as Disney films where you've got a very conventional heteronormative story and a romantic plot line that was all focusing around the marriage, and there isn't any level of ambiguity in that, whereas with the Panto it feels a bit more like it's telling that story in a slightly subversive way.
Yeah, I like how Panto's a bit naughty, and I didn't understand it as a kid, but I knew that there were naughty jokes happening and I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah, so it's not really just, it's not all about marriage, it's partly also about sex.
It's really about
which
sex.
is fun.
It's
But
double entendres.
But kids go to it.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite fun for kids to be like able to laugh at sexy stuff and to understand like that humour and silliness. And
I'm going to contradict that for a second though, because often women are made to be a kind of joke, as in a spectacle. So when you have the men portraying the ugly stepsisters, for instance, and maybe there might be a joke about their skirt swooping up or like some kind of other character being naughty with them. There are probably, I mean, I haven't actually been to a panto in a while, but there's probably a lot of problematic themes within that as well. And also, if we're talking Bechdel test, does it pass?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Do the ugly sisters pass? It's not, I mean, because the Bechdel test was invented for film, it's not so much of a question when you come to having male actors playing female characters, whereas when you get something like Panto and you have two men talking to each other in essentially kind of a form of drag.
Yeah. Oh my god, drag. Sorry. Do you watch RuPaul's Drag Race?
I haven't watched it yet. No, sorry.
I've literally just fallen in love with RuPaul's Drag Race, and that is such an interesting take on gender, on cisgender, on
like kind of exaggerating gender.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah, like the kind of like hyper extension of femininity and the representation of femininity, and how you can obviously be feminine but identify as male at the same time, or how you can just take on a gender and that's fine, and it can just be for the length of a performance.
I feel like that's something that Panto made normal for me from a very young age.
Yeah.
I feel like now I can go and watch a drag king or a female drag queen putting on like the drag queen style makeup and hair and the over the top hoop skirt type style that I admired in the Dames, and I can see women doing that, and I don't feel like there's any kind of rules, and I feel like because when I was 5 there weren't any rules when I was taken to see this family show on stage.
Yeah.
I love that extension of it, the kind of cabaret scene and the like actively subversive rather than the Panto like kind of semi-subversive. When you compare Panto to Disney, but then you compare actual really amazing burlesque and cabaret to Panto then suddenly seems really fuddy-duddy and like old-fashioned, especially
more
with
for kids,
like kids, and also like I think Panto scripts especially need to stay away from kind of 70s sexist humour, and I think there are some Pantos, like I've heard good things about the Aladdin at Lyric Hammersmith, and I mean also Aladdin's another one with the kind of exoticism element of it.
There is that in Panto. I mean, I think readdressing Panto now as an adult, because I really haven't been for years, I would probably find a lot of it problematic, but I'd say
it depends on the production.
It really depends on the production, and I want to see more. I think at the moment we're kind of talking very traditional Panto, and I think that there's probably a really great way, such as maybe with Aladdin, but of kind of doing Panto for now with the politics that we have on identity, for, I want to say modern audience, but I really hate that word. But you know, for us today, and so that we can go and see all the subversion and see all the kind of stock characters and stuff, but it also not be like maybe a bit fetishizing or exoticizing and maybe a bit rapey, and like, you know, I think that it has a space to do that, and I kind of want to see that. Let's
keep up the tradition, but maybe not all the traditions.
Yes. I think. Isn't that just like the moral of the story for everything? That's the Panto moral for the Bechdel Test. Yeah, so
happily ever after.
So that was some thoughts on Panto, but kind of moving on to other theatre-related news. Emma Rice's departure from the Globe.
Big news.
How do we feel about this? Obviously very sad, but let's talk about it.
Boo, hiss.
Boo, hiss. So Emma Rice is the artistic director of the Globe Theatre on the South Bank. Previously before her was Dominic Drumgoole and Mark Rylance. So she's the first female artistic director of the Globe, and she has been there for how long now? Until the announcement was made.
Less than a year.
Yep, less than a year. And then a statement was released saying that she is leaving the Globe because of basically artistic differences between herself and the board of the Shakespeare's Globe.
They didn't like her lighting choices.
And she was previously the director of Knee-High Theatre Company.
So they'd seen her work, presumably, when they interviewed her and chose her to be artistic director of the Globe. They had presumably talked to her about her plans for the Globe.
I know.
And then she did some brilliant things. She did a fantastic production of Midsummer Night's Dream. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely brilliant. It was one of the best productions of Shakespeare. Definitely the best Midsummer Night's Dream I've ever seen. I was a bit sick of that play, but it was totally, in my view, in the spirit of the Globe, in that the actors were interacted with the audience. It was accessible for the groundlings and on our £5 tickets for people who haven't been to the theatre a lot, because it made lots of contemporary references. There was lots of eye contact with the audience. There was lots of laughing and joking with the front row of the audience. There was moving through the audience physically in the space, which is always something that I associate with the Globe. Yeah, exactly. So it did feel like totally in the spirit of it, and live music. But apparently because of the lighting and microphones, that spirit in the Globe's point of view was not adequate.
But I think there's something to be said for, so they really want to continue with like authentic Shakespearean productions. I don't think if Shakespeare was here now, he'd boo a lighting rig and like amplified sound.
This is a guy who wrote the stage direction Exit Pursued by a Bear.
Yeah.
Would not have said no to lighting and sound if they'd existed in his day. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And half the stuff at the Globe, they've got plastic fruit dangling from the balconies to give it a rustic feel. You've got interval drinks, you've got
planes flying overhead.
Yeah, I mean,
you don't suspend your disbelief that much. I mean, I think one thing that was said in the statement was that Emma Rice has had a little backlash because she hasn't done much Shakespeare before, and she said that she found Shakespeare really like hard. But I'm someone who does not find it easy to book tickets for Shakespeare, and I find Shakespeare really hard, as do a lot of people, and the Globe is a place for a lot of tourists as well. And I think that I love the idea so much more of having someone be artistic director of the Globe who finds Shakespeare just as hard as the average person, and to see their take on Shakespeare and how they would deliver it to a different audience, because otherwise it can become, you know, quite closed off and kind of quite hard. And even though I think the Globe has done some really tremendous work, I think that I really like the idea of there being someone in charge of it who finds Shakespeare just as hard as me, and I think that's a really great move. But she's had loads of backlash for not enjoying Shakespeare that much.
And a lot of the other actors and directors that she got in and used in that season did know a lot about Shakespeare. It wasn't like it was just like a novice's version of Shakespeare. Like, there was plenty of work in that season that was for people just as much for people who are Shakespeare experts and who are Shakespeare scholars. I don't get it. I really don't get it.
And also in the statement, they said that, or previously in articles released, that she has had exceptionally strong box office returns. So it wasn't a commercial decision.
And the reviews were good.
And the reviews were good. I think it wasn't that she wasn't selling tickets. Everything did really, really well. It was very much a decision that a board of men made.
It was interesting that she did say on a panel the week before the announcement was made that she'd faced a lot of sexism in the industry. Just going to put that out there. Just going to leave that there.
Mainly like from the critics of her shows, I think. But I don't know how much that's taken into account. And, you know, there were people who were criticised Imogen as well. So she wasn't without her criticisms. But I think she's done so much for bringing in new audiences to the Globe, and it's just a massive shame to kind of lose her now. But I think she'll have gained a really big following from this.
I can't wait to see what she does next.
And she'll move on. And she's got the whole year. She's got 2017.
She's got the little match girl.
She's got the little match girl.
At the Sam Wanamaker Playhouse. She's directed that, and it's all candlelit. Ah,
which is really sweet.
Sweet and historical.
Exactly. So she ticks that box.
So we stand with you, Emma.
Yes.
We stand with you, Emma Rice, and all other female theatre makers who are facing unwarranted criticism, and we are here to see your work and enjoy it.
Yeah. So Beth, you recently caught up with someone from the Shakespeare Trilogy at the Donmar. Can you tell us a bit about who you met and what you got up to?
I met a wonderful actor called Jade, Anouka, who is playing several different roles in the Donmar Shakespeare Trilogy at the King's Cross Theatre.
Nice.
Which is a temporary theatre next to King's Cross Station.
So the season, it's an all-female cast for all three plays, right? And so that it's the same cast in each play, they just swap around roles?
It's roughly the same cast. There's a few people who are in some but not the others. But yeah, so the idea is that the women are all prisoners who take on the Shakespearean roles on top of their prison characters. So they use a kind of framing device to link the three plays together. I'm here with Jade Anouka at the King's Cross Theatre. We're in the bar, there might be a bit of background noise. Welcome, Jade, how are you?
Good, thank you. Lovely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. So you're playing Hotspur, Mark Antony, and Ariel.
Yes, so three
characters.
Amazing
Three
roles, and
characters.
very different as well, which has been really fun. Like exploring the differences, especially, you know, Ariel, particularly the Tempest. Well, because we've only really done with this particular company. Julius Caesar and the Tempest, it's been really interesting seeing the differences between the two shows and everyone between the two parts in the plays. It's such a different kind of play, really. Tempest is really fun. I mean, as Ariel, I get a lot of fun. I get to sing and rap and run about the stage in silly hats.
Appear magically.
It's
literally, you're like a magician. All the plays are linked together in this prison setting, right? So you're also playing, on top of that, a prisoner character?
Yeah, my prisoner character is called Jade. We all had a prison character which we sort of needed to kind of link, which helps to link the three shows together, but also helps with the setting and that we are playing prisoners putting on these productions, which actually seems like an easier step. It feels much easier for me to imagine myself as a prisoner. I'm a young black woman and I could easily be a prisoner. It's much harder to kind of imagine myself as a prince or the leader of an army in Rome, back in the day. So it was a very interesting way in, I thought.
So did the setting come first, or did you...
Well, I don't know, because when I first auditioned for Julius Caesar back in, 2012, I didn't even realise it was an all-female company. I didn't know it was in a prison. I just went to the Donmar thinking, amazing, I've got an audition at the Donmar to do Shakespeare with Philida Lloyd. This is ridiculous. And so I went dressed, in a little skirt, because at drama school you were told you when you go to Shakespeare, wear a skirt, it's good, classical. And I was actually auditioning for female character.
Yeah.
So it seemed fitting. And then I found out that Philida had this idea to set it in a prison. I mean, her and Harriet had been thinking about this before and had already worked and been in conversation with prisons and with Clean Break. So I don't know what came first, but for me then, once we started rehearsing, it was like, okay, let's get the prison characters down.
Clean Break.
Yes.
They are a company that work with women who've been through the justice system.
Yeah, or affected by it, or at risk of offending.
What was it like working with them?
They've been integral, I think, to authenticity, etc. We've had a few graduates of Clean Break pass through the doors of and be in the shows. Jen Joseph, who is currently in this production as a graduate, and we've had others through the years as well. Also Sarah Jane, who is one of the guards in the Trilogy, and especially Jane, who's been with us since the beginning. They've just been able to give us sort of insight into a world where we think we know, but we don't really.
Yeah.
If you've not been through it, and it's been really helpful for us to know, to develop our prison stories, to know that they're authentic, and also to help with the playing of the shows. What would be allowed, what wouldn't be allowed, what kind of characters do we get, how does status affect leaders, what's that idea, and the correlation as well between the story of the plays and a prisoner's life in ways. And what I mean by that is these productions, before they were ever chosen, Julius Caesar, Henry IV, The Tempest, Philida, Harriet, worked with Clean Break and with women in prison to do workshops and working out if these stories actually spoke to them, if the journeys that these characters in the plays were going through had any correlation, if they could, and they did, and that's why these plays were chosen, is because they made sense to these women.
Because there are a lot of themes of freedom and imprisonment in all of them, really.
In some ways, the kind of extreme circumstances that the characters in Shakespeare stories find themselves in are much closer to women who have been prisoners, women who have been through those situations and
life and death stuff.
Those big stuff. And I think in some ways it's been an amazing and very insightful way of getting to and realising that these epic stories are happening every day with people. It's not just something of the past.
And so Lucy Perman from Clean Break said that the thing that she loved about these productions is that they have a feminist and non-elitist approach. So Philida Lloyd's exploration of the stories and the presentation of them is feminist and non-elitist, which I really like. I really love that phrase. But what does it mean? What is theatre not normally feminist or non-elitist, or Shakespeare not normally feminist or non-elitist?
Well, I think especially the non-elitist. I know growing up, I thought that Shakespeare was just for. Well, it wasn't for me. It was for. I don't know, for want of a better word, posh people and old people. You know what I mean? And so for me, I think, young people, this is so good, or people who think Shakespeare isn't for them, or theatre isn't for them.
Yeah.
These productions, one of the reasons I'm so proud about being part of it is I think it's very inclusive, and I think you realise that actually you don't have to look a certain way or have had a certain experience or education to not only understand the plays and understand the stories, but enjoy them.
Yeah.
You know, and Philida's great about, you know, getting, for example, in The Tempest, I wrote some of my own raps. So in The Tempest, Ariel has some rhyming couplets, basically throughout, which don't follow the normal Shakespeare kind of rhythm that he often writes in. And it's almost like it's a little song or a little poem that Ariel's doing. And so Philida was just like, well, you write poetry, so why don't you write something that makes sense to you? This cast is, you know, not only are we all female, but it's a very diverse cast, and that is both, you know, in heritage, but also age, also experience, class. It's an amazing mix of people, and hopefully young people, anyone will come to this show and see somebody that potentially represents them or is similar to them in some way. You know, so often you go to the theatre. I know me, when I was at school and stuff, I'd go to the theatre or you know, you turn on your TV and you don't see people that look a bit like you, or people that are like people you know doing anything, let alone stuff that you want to do. So it's amazing to come and be like, and hopefully I've had amazing responses from young people when we've had school shows or come up to me, and they just were like, they couldn't believe that I was playing a lead role.
First 5 came, then 50, 120. But what could I do? What could I say? I'm just one woman, I can't make them go away.
So you wrote poetry.
I do.
And you've got a poetry book out at the moment.
I know, it's just mad.
It's
because
brilliant.
I know, I published poet. What?
It has the most romantic title as well. I just think it, for me, is like, that's what love is. What's the name of the poetry?
Eggs on Toast. I love eggs on toast.
Me too.
And it just makes me feel great.
Yeah.
It's the title of one of the poems in there. Yeah, I can't actually believe I've got a book out. It's, and poetry for me has always really just been a hobby, something to, a way to express, you know, myself in some ways, and to like let my imagination
You've
run
always done
sometimes. I've always written stuff, and it was at drama school actually where we were given 3 minutes to come up with anything, and I was like, what? They're like, you've got 3 minutes, you know, you've got a week. Yeah, typical drama. And I was like, oh, so I sat there with a pen and paper just like for hours, like, what am I going to do? And just started writing what I was thinking. Anyway, I had 3 minutes of poetry, and I was like, oh gosh. Anyway, performed it, and it was such a great response, and you know, my teacher and people were like, you should do this, and I was like, okay. Anyway, got out of drama school and went to some live poetry nights, and there was this one called Farrago Poetry that took place at RADA that somebody I met at National Youth Theatre told me about. So it was a load of mix, and I went there, and then it was like an open mic. I thought, okay, I'll just do the one that I did before because I know that one. Anyway, so the more I've done it, it's actually been a really great thing, especially you always need stuff to do in your downtime when you haven't got acting work, and it really keeps me sane when I'm not working, and also gives you a chance to, you know, talk about what you want to talk about in some ways. That, you know, acting is, when you're acting, you're doing other people's words, and it's great, and they do it better than me most of the time. But it's really lovely to do your own words. It's completely
your
different.
Own thing.
It is, and it's because it's very. I found it. I was very nervous because it's vulnerable, you know, and you don't know what people are going to think. And you know, some of my poetry is very personal. Others I've embellished. Others are about other people. So there is a mix, but people don't really know, and so you don't know what they're going to think of you. Which one's me? Which one's made up?
But you do also take inspiration from some of your acting work, because I noticed there's a few Shakespeare references in the poems, and there's one about the Penelope ad, which is another play you're in.
That was. Well, I write when I feel, I guess, whether that's happy, sad, or, you know, whatever it is. And the Penelopiad, which was my first play after I'd graduated, which was amazing, which is an all-female company. Josette Bushell-Mingo directed at the RSC, Penny Downey as Penelope, with a kind of mix of UK, Irish and Canadian actors. It was incredible. It was like an amazing...
And it's a beautiful, like, poetic text as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a wonderful text, and it really... I found it very moving to be part of that, and so I wrote my own version of the Penelopiad or Penelopiad.
So, finally, is there anyone you want to shout out to our followers that you recommend?
I have so many people.
Shows, artists, women, feminists.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with
theatre people.
My good friend Laura Dockrell, who's an amazing author, children's author, poet, illustrator. She's written young adult books as well. She's just an amazing human being, an amazing talent, and she's just thriving, and I think it's brilliant. Gemma Kearney, brilliant. She's just awesome. And again, these are people who work a lot with young people, and I think inspirational to women and young women. And I cannot miss out Supriya Mahfooz, who is just brilliant. I've been lucky enough to be in a few of her shows. I did a one-woman show, Chef, that she wrote, and it's just brilliant. Everything she touches, I think, is fantastic. I think she is... sounds ridiculous. This is going to sound mental, but I think she's like the new sort of Shakespeare of our time. She writes, when you read her work, there's a rhythm and a lyricism to it that is beautiful, and sort of, and it's just a joy. It's just a joy to say her words. She's fantastic. There's so many. But, yeah. They're my three for today, but there's so much more. Ask me.
Such a good list. Okay. So yeah, if you like Jade's list, check out those people. I can recommend all of them as well. They're brilliant.
Great.
Thank you very much for chatting to me.
Cheers.
It's been fantastic.
So great to hear Jade talk about
She
everything.
is such a star. Whatever she does next, keep an eye out for her, because it will be awesome. If you like the sound of her poetry, you can get her poetry book on her website, as well as catching the Donmar season if you can by the end of this week, 17th of December. Mm-hmm. And Sabrina, actually, is going to be an interviewee of ours very soon.
Yes.
So you get to find out more about her as well.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. Also, Jade's co-star in the Donmar Trilogy, Dame Harriet Walter, has a book out at the moment called Brutus and Other Heriones, which is about being a woman playing characters in Shakespeare. So the female characters, but also the male characters. Mm-hmm. So if you're interested in Shakespeare and gender, it's a really good one. And we've actually got some copies to give away.
Yes, Nick Hearn has very kindly given us 2 copies of Harriet's book so that we can give them away to you.
We have to do a challenge.
Yes, so we have #BringAFeministFriend challenge, which is where we challenge ourselves and you to take a friend to the theatre who identifies as feminist but might not normally go to the theatre. It came from feeling like we always bring the same people to go see shows, and I know I am very much guilty of that. And it's really nice and I think really important to bring people to theatre who don't normally go, and who might have an interest in a particular topic such as feminism or gender. So I took part in this challenge the other week, and I took some of my work friends to go see a one-woman show called You, Me and the Distance Between Us in Brighton at the Purple Playhouse, and it's by a female performer called Ellen Muriel, and it's a show about her experiences being a volunteer in the refugee camps along the refugee route last year. So I went to go take my friends to that, and they very kindly let me interview them afterwards. To take part in the challenge, you don't need to necessarily interview your friends, but if you just have a chat with your friends after you see a show about the show, and either tweet us or email us in your responses and their thoughts.
BechdelTheatre@gmail.com.
Yes.
#BringAFeministFriend if you're on Twitter.
Yes, so this is my interview with my mates for You, Me and the Distance Between Us, and I hope you enjoy. ask what you guys are like currently up to?
I'm not involved in theatre at all. I'm doing a master's in gender, violence and conflict, and currently working part-time at a cinema and also volunteering at Brighton Women's Centre.
Yeah, me neither. I've just started a PhD in physics, actually.
I'm also doing the Gender, Violence and Conflict Masters, and also work part-time in a hospital as an HCA.
Amazing. So can I ask what you guys thought of the play we just saw?
Not sure what I expected coming in, to be honest. Like a one-woman show about her volunteering experiences. I wasn't sure, if it would work with just one person. But I was, to be honest, really blown away. I thought she did amazingly, and she portrayed all the different arguments about whether you should volunteer, what right you have to be a volunteer, like what right you have to talk about a crisis like that when you're not directly involved in it. But I thought she explained it really well, and it was quite inspiring, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. To be honest, at the worst, I thought it could be like the one-woman show in Friends, which is quite fantastic.
Why don't you like me?
But it was absolutely fantastic, and as I said earlier, it made me really want to stand up and take action, but also kind of dispel a lot of myths around volunteering, which I have personally experienced as well, and the kind of backlash you get from people who probably don't do that much in general to help other people, but like to make you feel bad for doing so. So I think she did a really good sketch of that in her show, and I think it was really good how she was trying, she was not telling the refugee stories, she wasn't trying to replicate their story. I think she was really good at kind of representing stories, but not,
it was her story.
Yeah, it was her story, and it wasn't imposing a story on other people, basically. And on the refugees as well.
Good balance between humour and obviously the sadness of the horrific situation, but the way she did kind of the characters of all the different types of volunteers, perhaps the stereotypes and what you do get, great, kind of broke the tension when there were some pretty tough scenes to watch at times, but she did them really well.
And how do you think that the show varied to maybe other forms of entertainment or media that you kind of absorbed? Do you think that it felt really different to kind of seeing a documentary on TV or reading an article?
I find theatre always much more a personal experience. I think when you read an article, you watch a documentary, you can be quite separate from it. But I think when you're in a theatre, it's just such a great environment to really immerse yourself in a story. And yeah, I just do feel it's so much more personal. And I think it found it quite moving at times. And I just don't think you can get that sometimes if someone's written a really great article, a really good documentary, but often you kind of lose that in watching from a screen or reading or something.
Yeah, I agree. I feel especially here the space was really intimate, so I think the power of the show was much more powerful for me, especially. The only thing that I've seen recently which actually does evoke the same emotions from me was the film I, Daniel Blake, which I think had the same sort of intimate and personal story feel to it. But I think, we were speaking earlier about the way that you get fed the media and you get told what often the government wants you to hear. You don't really get personal experience like that, and I think it kind of brings home that this is still happening even though it's not in the news at all right now. I think that so many people could do with seeing a play like that because it does make it real rather than just they're the other on the news.
Do you feel with an issue that is so big and political, do you think theatre was the right form to address this situation, or do you think that there's power in it being one person's experience and doing it in this environment, in an intimate environment? Do you think it would be different if you saw it on a big West End stage?
I think that theatre for me in that case was really powerful because it's everybody has different politics, and whilst the refugee crisis is a massive political issue, I just think that hearing it on the news just doesn't have the same impact as hearing someone's direct straight with it. And that's what she was trying to say, this is my direct experience, and that's something she can tell. She can't tell you various other things about the world, but she can tell you about her experience in those specific refugee camps. And I think that theatre in this instance was really powerful for that, although I think I would see it in a big theatre as well, and I think that more people should see it. So for me, going to a big theatre would be really useful. If it's about raising awareness of the issues and people's experiences, then but maybe it wouldn't have the same impact on me, I don't know.
Do you normally go to one-woman shows? I know you tend not to be theatre-y people, but would it kind of scare you to go to a one-woman show? Does it put you off, or are you kind of really excited by it?
I think it's intriguing. I think because there isn't a lot out there, well, not that I've heard of, perhaps. I do enjoy going to the theatre, but I don't go, often. But a one-woman show, I think it's great. especially like as feminists, I think, you know, like women's experiences, which is essentially what this whole play is about, her experience, you know, that's like the basis of feminism, essentially. Listening to other people's experiences and how she dealt with that situation, all the issues about it, I thought was great. So I think definitely...
I think now that I've seen it, I'd want to go. Now that I've been to a one-woman show, I'd want to go to more. I think before I wouldn't have gone to many, to be honest. Like, I've seen a few... like comedians that advertise and like female comedians, and I thought, oh, I should really go to that because I'm a feminist and they're female and I should support that. So now I feel like I definitely would want to do that more now that I've seen it, and I'm like, wow, that was amazing.
Thanks so much for doing that. That was really interesting to hear. So everyone else, it's your turn now. Get involved, take somebody to the theatre, send us either a recording or an email about it, or tweet us using #BringAFeministFriend.
And I'm holding the book right now, and it's really beautiful, and I really want a copy, and I wish that I got one for doing the challenge, but I don't.
Brutus and Other Heroines. You can have my copy because I've read it already.
Oh my god, amazing.
But
Okay,
we've
cool.
still got copies to give away, so
Yes.
get sending.
Also, myself and Beth went to go see a play recently, not as part of the #BringAFeministFriend, because we are both in the theatre world and we go to theatre anyway, but we are friends who are feminists.
Yeah.
So we passed that. But we went to go see Oil, which was on at the Almeida, which was directed by Carrie Cracknell, written by Ella Hickson, and starring Anne-Marie Duff as the protagonist. And there's also a really amazing female creative team as well.
So Vicky Mortimer's doing the design, Lucy Carter doing the lighting, lots of women represented, and a very female-centred story. There's not too much to worry about spoilers because the show's just finished.
Yeah.
So we went to see it right at the end of the run, and you can still get the script, maybe it'll be on in the future, but you're not going to go see it at the Almeida. So we're going to talk about this production. Spoilers are plenty.
Yes.
So it was basically the story of a mother-daughter relationship throughout the centuries, in parallel with the rise and fall of the oil industry and the capitalist world of business that's built up alongside that, but centred around the effect that it had on one particular kind of woman, who's Anne-Marie Duff, and her daughter also, who's played by Yolanda Kettle.
Yeah.
And so they were playing sort of the same characters all the way through the play, even though it started in 1800 and finished in the future in 2051, which was kind of a little bit confusing.
Yeah, and I didn't really get it. For me, they didn't make it that clear. I don't know, there was some... I feel like they kind of missed their mark in bit in making that really obvious. Or maybe I just need that really obviously told to me. Or maybe I just need to drink less wine when I go to the theatre. but I feel like they didn't... I don't know. It wasn't that clear to me.
I think I kind of got it because they had the same names all the way through, and the actors did do a really good job of kind of continuing an emotional journey for the characters, whilst there were like notes on the stage. There was like subtitle things that said what year it was.
Yeah.
So you kind of you got told that it was this year, but then you were like, oh, that's the same character. That's Amy, who was there in the previous scene. That's May, she was there in the previous scene. And their names were anagrams of each other, so I did get the sense they were kind of sort of every woman characters.
Yeah, so the mum was Amy, and then the daughter was May.
Well, it's the other way around, I think.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, but
Yeah, I didn't think that was made that clear. I mean, I thought that might have been something they were trying to do, but I didn't think that it was executed well enough for me to actually think that it was right. So yeah, maybe that might have just been me. Probably the majority of the audience got that it was the same woman.
Oh, the only thing that I didn't get was that song that you had to tell me was Justin Bieber.
When was that?
It was towards the end, and I was like, why is everyone laughing?
Oh,
And
yeah,
you're like,
Love Yourself.
She's singing Justin Bieber.
Yeah, is it if it's like, yeah, they were
I'm
trying
sorry,
to do
I've
like
touched.
a throwback to the past when they're in the future, and then they sing "Love Yourself" by Justin Bieber, which for an audience at the Almeida might have been a bit of a miss because
No, they loved it. They all laughed except me. I was
Do
the
you
only one
think?
that
There was
didn't
quite
get
a
it.
lot of old people I thought he didn't get it.
Maybe they were just laughing along. But yeah, so it was kind of, I mean, a lot of it was focused around the idea of imperialism, capitalism, of British people going into other countries. It took us all around the world, from Cornwall to Persia to a posh Hampstead house where the Anne-Marie Duff's character is a oil businesswoman of an oil company.
And the thing is in that scene is that instead of not being able to control oil, she can't control her daughter, which I thought was quite
but she is very much in control of sort of the business side of things, except then this man from Libya comes in and says, we want to nationalise our oil industry, so her kind of capitalist hold on the world is a bit threatened by the Middle East wanting to claim back what's rightfully theirs. And then fast forward Baghdad, and she's in a war zone trying to get her daughter back, so the daughter's journey was kind of towards independence, and the mother's journey was sort of towards power, maybe.
Yeah, I like that.
And then at the end you get this scene where they're back in Cornwall again, but everything is gone dark again. So in the first scene it's very dark, the last scene it's very dark, and we get the feeling that the oil has run out. They have no more power, they have no electricity.
And this is only like 2050, like this isn't supposed to be, that far ahead.
So it's kind of meant to be a bit of a scare moment. And then this woman, so in each scene there's an outsider coming in to disrupt things, and the outsider in the final scene is like a Chinese woman coming in to sell them a new form of energy. In their light of their lack of oil, she comes in and says, we've got the future. She opens a briefcase that's filled with whatever this new future energy is.
Yeah, I kind of felt a bit like, I don't know, I was a bit critical of her as a character because I am from Chinese heritage, and whenever I see another like Chinese woman on stage, I get really excited. But I find that they're often represented as kind of very lacking in emotion and kind of very cold, and kind of, they often have like they have like a very blunt, angular haircut, which this woman did, and she came in and she was speaking Mandarin, and she just kind of was there to just kind of be an emblem of China as a continent rather than as a woman with an identity, which is afforded to the white Western women a lot more. And I would have liked...
She was a bit frightening.
Yeah, and she was a bit robotic, and she kind of... Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a shift in narrative. So this Chinese woman comes in, and it's kind of like the collapse of the white West and of the white Western women, and it's kind of feeling like, history is ending, or the future is ending with that demise.
That's not the end of the world.
Which isn't the end of the world. And I would have liked for there to be like a little like footnote, like extra scene of the Chinese woman then going maybe back to China or to where she lives, and then you kind of get to see this new generation or like this new future. What is this woman's life? What's her future going to be? What's her relationship with her daughter? What's going to continue for women, rather than white women's future is ending, that's the end of it, that's the end of the story.
Yeah, I feel like the play wasn't uncritical of the white woman's experience and her complicity in colonialism, imperialism and capitalism and all its faults, but at the same time it didn't really explore the alternative.
Yeah.
Which might be what that woman could represent if we'd seen where she was coming from and where she was going.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was good. Get a copy of the script and give it a read if you want to make up your own mind, or let us know what you thought if you went to see it.
Right, so I think that's all we got time for this episode. Thanks very much to everyone who participated and interviewed, and to you, Beth.
Thanks to you, Pippa.
So grab a pen and a notepad, because we've got some dates for your diary, because we want to tell you about stuff that is upcoming in the new year that we think will be passing the Bechdel Test.
Well, we think it might pass the Bechdel Test. We're not sure because we haven't seen all these things yet.
No.
But we're looking at things with majority female characters or multiple female characters. We're looking for female writers, female directors. So even if the script doesn't pass the Bechdel Test, there's a good chance the rehearsal room would, which is good.
So following on from Oil at the Almeida, coming up next is Mary Stewart, which is on until the 21st of January. It's an adaptation of a Schiller production, this time by Robert Icke, but it's starring Juliet Stevenson and Leah Williams, and the music is composed by Laura Marling, who's a really great folk singer, so you should check her out. It sounds really interesting. The play centres on two queens, Mary Stuart and Elizabeth I. One of them is in power and one of them is in prison. And there will be a pre-show panel discussion on the 11th of January called Women in Power, which is a panel with a bunch of different women such as Laura Bates, Sonia Friedman, Lucy Kerbel from Tonic Theatre, Dawn Foster, who writes for The Guardian, and Tanya Sagatian, who works in TV, and she's a BAFTA-winning film producer. So that would be really interesting, and we're hopefully going to go to that pre-show discussion and then the play on the 11th, so please come and join us.
Definitely, see you there.
And we can go to the bar afterwards.
The Donmar Trilogy at King's Cross Theatre is finishing on the 17th of December. You've got a couple of days if you're listening to this as it comes out. But the Donmar Warehouse has a new production of St. Joan, starring Gemma Arterton, who's had a really fantastic career recently. I loved Nell Gwyn and Made in Dagenham. And this is directed by Josie Rourke, the artistic director of the Donmar Warehouse. I feel like it's pretty much already sold out, so you might be queuing for day seats, but I think it probably will be worth it.
Soho is doing really well by the looks of it next year, starting off with Dr. Karneski's Incredible Bleeding Women, which is on until the 7th of Jan, which is a production looking at menstruation being one of the last taboos of what we can talk about in terms of women's experience in women's bodies. It looks to be a kind of cabaret, burlesque, and judging by the title, freak show kind of production, so I think that'll be really interesting. Also, Two-Man Show is coming back to Soho Theatre, which me and Beth both saw at Edinburgh, which is an incredible production by Rashtash Theatre Company, which stars 2 female performers, even though it's called Two-Man Show, and it's kind of using physical theatre and text to explore masculinity, which is really interesting, and we're going to go see it again.
Yeah, I loved it in Edinburgh.
Also coming up at Soho is Touch by Vicky Jones, who is one half of Dry Right Theatre Company, which is Phoebe Waller-Bridge's theatre company, and it's kind of another production similar to Fleabag. So if you didn't catch Fleabag when it came back to Soho after its television production, catch Touch, because it seems to be like it's doing really similar things, and it sounds like it's going to be really good, especially as it's part of Dry Right.
There's an interesting one, again finishing this week, but worth checking out at the Arcola, which is called How to Date a Feminist. It's interesting because it does not pass the Bechdel test. Samantha Ellis, the writer, wrote an interesting article about how she was questioning whether the Bechdel test was useful because she was writing a play about a feminist issue, but it was about a relationship between a man and a woman in which the woman goes on a journey where she's learning about feminism. She's very much a protagonist, but it doesn't pass the Bechdel test. So it's an interesting idea, and it's definitely still proves the point that you can make a feminist play, you can write a feminist script without necessarily passing the Bechdel test. So that's on until 17th of December. Get in there quick. Oh, Offside by Supriya Mahfooz and Holly McNish. Sabrina, who will be a guest very soon, will be talking more about this, and she's written a play with poet Holly McNish about women in football through the generations. It's touring throughout the UK in March and April, so you don't have to be London based for this one, and it's a really interesting script. I got to read a little bit, but when we had our Bechdel Theatre launch night, Sabrina very kindly sent us a draft of one of the scenes, and it sounds like a great story, so I'm really, really looking forward to see that. And
Women in sport, that sounds great.
Yeah, exactly. Women in sport and women in theatre. How often do those things mix? Not often enough, so I'm excited to see this play.
Cool, and there will be a new production of Posh, which was by Laura Wade and originally at the Royal Court, but will be showing at the Pleasance Theatre in April. However, this play will be starring an all-female cast. It was originally starring 12 posh, privileged white men, and it was looking at kind of toxic masculinity. But with this cast, it says it will be played by all women, but they will be kind of exploring androgyny in terms of gender. So it would be really nice to see maybe kind of looking at a gender and non-binary people and women playing these roles. And I kind of hope that they do a bit more than just replace the male characters with just women and kind of hope to tell the same story. I think it'll be slightly more nuanced, and I think it'll be kind of doing something more to talk about femininity, masculinity, being non-binary, all of those stuff. So that's going to be really exciting, and that will be at the Pleasance in April.
Also, we have Bechdel Theatre's very own project, which is coming up in a scratch night at Theatre Delicatessen's old library space. It's their new reclaimed space. It's a lovely, cosy old Victorian library in Burgess Park, and we're holding a scratch night that showcases new work based on our project, Bechdel Testing Life, which is where we're asking women, female-identifying humans, to send us your own recordings of your Bechdel test passes. So we want you to have a conversation, record it on your phone. You've got to do it by January 3rd if you want it to be featured in the scratch night. But you can talk about anything you like on your phone and email it to us, BechdelTheatre@gmail.com, so that we can give it to a collection of writers, directors, actors and theatre makers who are interested in creating work that centres around women who are normally underrepresented on stage. So we're particularly looking at anybody who is underrepresented, as well as being female, being LGBT, women of colour, black minority ethnic, disabled women. We're looking at women with different accents, women from working class backgrounds. Anybody who feels underrepresented, we want to centre stories around those, and we're trying to increase and improve representation by using real women's voices and authentic female relationships. So if you've got one of those, if you've got a relationship with another woman, send us your conversations by January 3rd, and if you come to the Scratch Night on the 21st and you sent us a conversation, you can get them for free.
Cool. All right. Thanks very much, guys. And we will catch you next time for episode number 2 of the Bechdel Theatre podcast. And please feel free to tweet or Facebook or get in contact with us in any way if you want anything else to be added to the show. It's still a work in progress. We still have a lot of ideas of what's coming up.
Yeah, and recommend anything you think we should go and see and talk about. If you've got a show on, or if you've seen something great that represents women, we'd love to hear about it. At Bechdel Theatre on Twitter, BechdelTheatre@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, guys.